As we approach week 11 of the season, there are major implications from some games like Washington State versus Oregon. That's major implications for the North. Trust me, as a Cougar fan, of course, you know I'm excited. Then we're also going to talk about some changes to staffs that were made, some firings in Washington and in Oregon. So all of that and more on Locked On Pac-12 Podcast.
You are Locked On Pac-12, your daily podcast on the Pac-12 Conference. It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thanks for tuning in and making Locked On Pac-12 Podcast your first listen of the day. I'm your host, Cindy Robinson, and joining me today is Michael Luke. Bryan Brown from Locked On Ute. Today's episode of Locked On Pac-12 Podcast is brought to you by McDonald's, proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's an unofficial community center. A big thank you to our friends at McDonald's for always being there. And as always, I'm loving it. Bryan.
Cindy. We're back.
Are you ready? Huh?
It was so long. I missed you.
It feels. Oh, Bryan, you're so funny. So, Bryan, there are some major implications as the weeks are dwindling down with what's left of the season. We are going into week 11. I think there's 3 more weeks before we get into championship week? 3, 4? I've miscalculated because I don't know. I got to pay attention to how many games is left. The byes kind of tripped me up. Okay, 3 games left. So, this weekend, one of the major implications for the North is Washington State versus Oregon. And yes, Oregon is the favorite right now and all that good stuff. But Washington State is right on the heels of Oregon. And all I could think about is how sweet it will taste when the Cougars get that victory in, Autzen Stadium and take home the lead in the North. It may be wishful thinking to some of y'all, but have you been seeing the way the Cougars have been playing? They're coming off of a bye week, so they should be fully rested, and I'm hoping and praying that does not backfire on them and that the rest actually is beneficial and help and a hindrance to what they've been doing and what they've been accomplishing in the Pac-12. So for you, Bryan, when you think of this matchup, what are your biggest red flags for the Cougars and the Ducks?
How do you block Kayvon Thibodeau?
Yeah.
That's a big one.
That's a big one for everybody. But
the other one is just, how do you get to this Oregon offense? They haven't been electric, but they've been probably the best offense in the conference for most of the year. They've been efficient. They don't turn the ball over a ton. And I think that's a big reason why they're where they are at in the conference and both in the win-loss record. When the run game is going, it is very difficult to stop. We've seen James Dye step in and do a great job in place of he who I always forget to name, CJ Verdell, who has been out for the season with an injury. Mm-hmm. And I think that's a big thing with this Oregon team. They're not going to try and be super explosive, but they've got a lot of guys that can make plays, and we're starting to see Joe Moorhead have more confidence in quarterback Anthony Brown. He's got Johnny Johnson out there on the edge at wide receiver too, and Micah Pittman, and talked about James Dye. There is talent on this offense that can make the ball move, and as long as they don't turn the ball over, that defense will get after you.
That's 100. Okay, that's fair. That's fair. Now,
facts though.
Facts though. When it comes to Washington State and the improvement we've seen from them this season, they are a team that I think can actually compete with Oregon. We've seen Oregon have some dominant games this year. We've seen them have some not so dominant games, but they still were able to pull off their win, right? Because for whatever reason, I feel like Oregon is strong enough to play a lackluster game, but still know how to finish strong and close it out. And I think that is where, if Washington State can get out on Oregon like they did against ASU and maintain their I won't say it even has to be consistency, but just maintain their composure and actually finish out the game, they may actually see a complete turnaround. And you already know who I'm saying give the ball to. Max Borghi. Thank you very much. Okay. Take advantage of using Max Borghi. Give Jaden Delara the opportunities, to find receivers, but also run the ball himself, because we saw a lot of that against ASU. I think with this Washington State team, there's a lot of people who underestimate. Even after seeing what they've done, I think there's still a level of underestimating what they can accomplish. And I definitely think that's going to be the case going up against the Oregon Ducks.
We were talking about McDonald's earlier. McDonald's has the Big Mac. Well, Washington State has the Slick Mac, and that's Deion McIntosh. And he is slick because he is a tough guy to get a hand on. He's been very effective in the running game. I think he's been very unheralded. We love Max Borghi, obviously, because he is sprightly. He's electric. He's got some bubble to him, some juice. He is the high C orange. As long as I'm staying with this metaphor, close to the heart.
I'm sorry, I love
close to the heart. But Deion McIntosh is the sustenance to this offense. And so those are two guys that I think really can have an impact against this Oregon team that is still somewhat inexperienced, right? Now, you've got Abe Lucas at the left tackle position, assuming that Oregon does try to go strength against strength and put Thibodeau on that side. They do move him around a ton, so that's going to be a tough thing to manage. But I think as I'm looking in this game, there's a couple things that I love to look at. I always love to look at the ESPN FPI prediction, right? They have Oregon as an 83% favorite to win this game.
Boo.
There we go. Okay. I was waiting for it. I knew something was coming.
Boo is what I say to that. I already said everyone's underestimating Washington State in this game, as they should. Like, let the record, show. First off, let's just
Oregon's
think about
good.
what we've,
Let the record show that Oregon is good. They've only lost in one game all year.
And that's literally all. You can't deny that, right? Anybody with their right mind would put their money on Oregon. And that's why I'm putting my money on the Cougars. Yeah. No, I'm just kidding. Honestly, it's just my allegiance to them, but also because I've seen the growth of them this season. And I just know that this is the type of team that will 100% have the opportunity and ability to upset in this game. And I think, if anything, they have the motivation and willpower. Like, they're seeing what they've accomplished so far this season, right? And that alone can give you the confidence you need to go up against an opponent like this. So for me, I think in the past, a lot of times going up against a team like Oregon, there would be some level of defeated. You're already coming into the game defeated. I don't think that this Washington State team is moving like that. And I've seen that in the past years from other Washington State teams. I don't see that in them. I see them going into each game confident about their abilities, knowing that they can compete, and at the minimum are going to give their all and make you take that win from them. Not going to give it to you. In the past, they would just give it away.
Nothing to lose, everything to prove, right? And they've got a giant chip on their shoulder right now. And I think when you look at this game from a statistical standpoint, the one number that it stands out the most to me overall is this. Washington State leads the conference in number of turnovers caused with 20. Oregon is second with number of turnovers caused in 17. If you look at turnover margin, the separation is California, Oregon, Washington State, all in the top three. And there's decimal points that separate the three of them. So it's clearly going to be a battle of who can manage to stay, who can hang on to the football, who can possess the football. And then you kind of leave the rest of it up to see what kind of shenanigans Coach Dickert and his crew, his ragtag rapscallions, can put together. These courageous Cougs out there just fighting their way through the conference, but they've been through a lot this year, and I'm sure you as with it being your alma mater, feel a little bit of that as well, right? It's been rough to see your school kind of drag through all this stuff, and the team is taking advantage of the opportunity in front of them and won games in spite of it.
Yeah. All right. Well, we have to move forward and discuss some other things happening on the Pac-12. Some other teams losing coaches and staff. We're going to dive into that next. But I need to let you all know that this episode of Locked On Pac-12 is brought to you by McDonald's. proudly serving communities since 1965. McDonald's has always been more than just a place to get tasty, affordable food. It's a place where friends and family can come to reconnect, a place where classmates can meet up for a study group, knowing they'll have dependable Wi-Fi and endless supplies of French fries and McFlurries. Win or lose, it's a place where teammates, competitors, the home team, or the away team can come to recharge. It's the place you always look forward to stopping at on a long road trip to rest your legs and refuel. For me, whenever I think of McDonald's, I'm always taken back to a time when I would beg my mom for that Happy Meal after school. Favorite part of that was the toy, the orange Hi-C, and the French fries. And to this day, I'm so thankful they brought the orange Hi-C back because now they have the whole dollar large drinks. And anytime I get a chance, I try to take advantage of that. So I don't know about you, but I'm definitely ready to head to my local McDonald's to refuel and reconnect. Did somebody say locked on of party? I think that would be perfect for the weekend. I don't know about you, Bryan, but I'm loving it. Shout out to you, listener, for making Locked On Pac-12 Podcast your first listen of the day. We are free and available on all platforms. Okay, now, Bryan, we have to dive into the next matchups that will probably have some implications for the South more than the North. ASU versus UW. Before we get into talking about that game too much, because we've already talked with Connor this week, Richie this week, not Connor, Richie. We talked with Richie about what we can expect from ASU versus UW. But on UW's side, they did have a firing of sorts of the staff.
Oh, it was a straight up pack your bags.
Well, go ahead and break it down for us, Bryan Brown. Go ahead and break it down.
Well, I think offensive coordinator John Donovan's been on the hot seat all year long. The offense hasn't produced nearly what they expected it to, especially, where they were so confident with all the players exiting the program in the offseason that they were still going to be relevant. Dylan Morris has regressed massively, I think, as a quarterback, and he looks uncomfortable even just throwing the football without pressure. And so after only amassing 7 total first downs against Oregon, it made a lot of sense to cut ties there. Now, there's more brewing off the field, obviously, as there's the clip of Jimmy Lake seemingly hitting a player, and it seems as though the athletic department is still going through the investigation with that at the time that we recorded this. So what impact that might have as well. Yeah. Well, and really, it's been a year of drama for the Huskies since game 1, right? You lost that game to Montana. Montana's a decent team, but definitely not one that you should have ever lost to. And then it would just continued. They struggled against Arizona in Tucson on a Friday night. Really haven't ever established themselves. And so now, the season looks like it's slipping out of their grasp. Yeah.
Bleak. Okay, so here's my thing. We are all human. We all have emotions, especially if you're competitive humans, right? You have emotions towards losing and not accomplishing things that you saw fit to. But when you're in positions of power, such as head coach, you should know how to keep your composure, especially when it comes to working with student athletes. And I know technically college students are adults, they're over 18, most of them. But it's still kids. So why are you getting so aggressive? I've never been a fan of overly aggressive coaches, even if that works for some athletes. I just don't think that's the best way to tap into it. But I can take you yelling, right? Anything physical, and even some words too, can be considered wrong to use, in that coaching position. And I do think a lot of coaches get in those positions and have a ego trip, this whole abuse of power because you are in that role. I think most of them forget that as a coach, you're a leader first, and these students look to you for guidance, not just on the field, but, for 4 years of life in a sense, and if they can't come to you, or if they feel like the way you react to things as something as small as losing, because at the end of the day, that's a small part of playing this game. I know the main objective is winning, but I don't know. I don't like that. I don't know. I'm going to be paying attention to that investigation because I don't like hearing that at all.
And for those who hadn't seen the clip yet, Lake comes screaming down the sideline as one of his players is we'll say interacting with an official and someone else, and kind of just like throws a hand at the face mask of the player aggressively. And I think it's exactly what you're talking about, where it's this hyper aggression and these antics that we're kind of starting to see on the sideline. I think it's more indicative of the pressure that Lake is feeling than actually, the behavior of his player in that moment. Your frustration is with the fact that your offense sucks. It's not with the guy who's out there trying to get the game, trying to get something going in the game or fire himself or someone else up, right? So rather than taking out that frustration on the player who's just trying to do something, anything at this point in time to try and spark this team, which has seemed lifeless for most of the season, maybe you should look to do something in your schemes to do the same for the offensive side of the football rather than throwing bows.
If you can't take the heat, get out of the kitchen, okay? So
because we on a mission.
If you can't handle the pressure of being a coach, and when I say pressure, that comes with losing and winning. Like, you can't handle losing. I was told I don't know about you, but as a young child, when you start playing sports and being competitive, my mom, my coaches all taught me, if you can't take losing like you would when you win, then you don't need to be playing a sport. And that's not to say accept a loss like you would a win, but know how to be a gracious loser, right? You don't be an a-hole. You don't, get overly aggressive. You're going to get frustrated. If you're a competitive person, you're naturally going to get frustrated. But there is just a way to carry that. Be upset in the moment, but don't take it out on other people. Like, I don't know. It's hard. It's hard to fully explain in details without sounding like I'm contradicting myself. But you know what I'm saying. And if you're an athlete, you know what I'm saying because you've heard this time and time again. There's a way to lose and there's a way to win. And you can be a ungracious winner too. That's not cute. So maybe that's something Mr. Lake should look into. But it does also sound like he was trying to stop his player from doing too much with the ref, which is a whole nother thing because we know, interactions with refs can be a little dicey as well as far as players go. But UW is not the only team who has made some staff changes. And so we'll get into that coming up next. But for all my college football betting, or actually not even college football, basketball, whatever you like to bet on, then you need to know about BetOnline.ag. A new web interface for the start of the basketball season and more props, odds, and lines than ever before over at betonline.ag. BetOnline remains your number one spot for all the basketball and football action this season. So head to the new updated desktop or mobile website to sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code LOCKEDON to receive your bonus. From basketball, football, NHL, boxing, and UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games. Don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for the 2021 season. BetOnline is the fastest and easiest way to bet on all your favorite sports. BetOnline is where the game starts. All right, Brian. So next game that I don't even know, again, that it's necessarily this game probably won't have any major implications on the North. But Stanford versus Oregon State is an intriguing game because both teams have been kind of running into some issues in their play. Stanford kind of started off hot, upsetting USC, upsetting Oregon, and then things got a little difficult for them. And it's been difficult, and it's only been getting worse. And that game against Utah last weekend showed that. With Oregon State, kind of the same. They've been running into some speed bumps there. The upset versus Cal was probably one of the worst games for them that we've seen. And at this point, it's made such an impact that we saw Oregon State actually have a firing of their own. I'm going to let Brian take it away because he knows more details here, and I know when to pass the reins over.
Yeah, this one's a little bit more of a surprise to me. We talked about John Donovan, not having a lot of success, but the Oregon State Beavers made a move to release the defensive coordinator Tim Tibesar from his duties. Smith said the following: "I felt it was the right time to make a change in our football program and have relieved Coach Tim Tibesar of his duties at Oregon State. All of us thank Coach Tibesar for his hard work and professionalism the past 4 years and wish him nothing but the best moving forward." So moving forward, it's going to be assistant head coach / inside linebackers coach Trent Bray that will be acting as the interim defensive coordinator. I would imagine that Smith will be spending a lot of his time over on that side of the ball as well. They're not happy with the way things are going, which, this is a Oregon State team that's got a good enough rushing attack and a good enough offense to win games in the Pac-12, and I think they felt that their defense has let them down. There could be things behind the scenes too that we haven't heard yet as well. I think those are a little bit rare this late in the season to cause something, for a firing. But I think this is definitely performance-based, and they're scrapping to try and get up there, right? They're scrapping to get into a bowl game. They're scrapping to stay in the top half of the North. They're scrapping to try and win a division. They have to make moves right now. It's a critical point in that program where they have to make these strides, and so that's a tough decision for Coach Smith to make. But at the same time, he knows his program best, and I think he feels like that this is definitely the move going forward.
Is there an ideal time to fire? Like, in my opinion, I would have waited for the offseason, right? Because, why not finish out? But do you feel like in their thought process, maybe they feel like these coaches or whatever may have tainted their chances moving forward?
I think this is the interesting thing about what's happening with college athletics and especially football now is with the early signing period happening in December, coaching moves are being made much, much earlier. It's why we saw Clay Helton let go. It's why we saw Gary Patterson kind of unceremoniously dismissed from TCU after he'd been there for 20-some-odd years. He was an icon, a legend, and they said, hey, you can stay for the rest of the year. And he said, kick rocks, I'm leaving now if you're going to fire me. And at the same time, I see it from the administrative side of things. Like, you've got to solidify your hires and have guys in place so that the incoming recruits know who they're going to play for. Otherwise, you're going to have chaos in your class. And the vultures are always circling in a recruiting class no matter what, right? There's always a program out there that's trying to steal your recruit, Mr. Steal Your Recruit.
Mr. Steal Your Recruit. I am so done.
Yeah, I think, Utah fans, it's probably their mortal enemy, Antonio Pierce, who's done a very good job of that in years past. I think Dante Williams was a guy that was, legendary for that kind of thing when he's at Oregon, and then to a degree, now as he's been at USC. And so you have to make these moves in order to keep your class together and go out and strategize in case you do lose a commitment or two.
Mm-hmm. That's fair. I didn't think about that. That makes sense because you're trying to attract certain recruits and making it clear that you're making changes. It's easy to promise recruits something, but to actually show them look, we've done it. It probably goes a longer way. Hopefully, if that is the case, that then it's actually benefiting them and not they're losing this coach and then they still lose out on the recruit. You know what I mean? Because making decisions like that solely on what you're trying to attract could kind of backfire, in my opinion. But I'm sure there's other things that come into play, but that's a good point that you made and probably a real strong reason why we're seeing so many changes late in the season, because even bringing anybody in at this point, I don't think they're going to have a major impact to change up your schemes, defensive,
program culture. You're not going to completely reset everything. You're just going to kind of manage this thing into the end of the season. But I think the biggest thing is that you make this move now so that if you do lose commitments, there are still fish in the pond that you can go catch.
Yeah. Well, Oregon State will face Stanford this weekend, and I don't know. I feel like for Oregon State, it's for sure a must win. Stanford at this point is kind of just lingering. I'm not even 100% sure they have a chance of making a bowl game. I don't think so.
Yeah, 6 losses puts them right on the brink. They'd have to win out in order to make that happen.
So they could be 500, go 500. Yeah.
Very, very unlikely, I think. And some of that will depend on the health of Tanner McKee. And Stanford always plays those extremely carefully.
Yeah. Well, so both of them do have a lot on the line as far as their postseason aspirations go. But yeah, I think it's crunch time now for everybody, and everybody is scrambling to secure those wins they need to become bowl eligible. And for those of them that are still in the hunt for the Pac-12 championship or Pac-12 titles to get to the Pac-12 championship, it gets a little more exciting. So that WSU versus Oregon game, it is like a championship in itself at this moment. Even if you all don't see it that way because you just think the Ducks are going to demolish us, I'm letting you know the Cougars are not just going to roll over and take it, okay? They are going to try their hardest. I'm not going to say they're trying their hardest. They're going to bring a matchup to the Ducks, dang it. And the Ducks are going to have to fight for it. They're not going to just be giving it, period. Boom.
It has been that way all season for Oregon, and I think, Washington State does kind of pose some interesting matchup stuff where, if you can get the ball outside to Borghi, if you can get the ball going in misdirections, it kind of negates that speed and that ability of that Oregon defense. We've talked about Kayvon Thibodeau, but it's not just him. It's Noah Sewell. It's some of the defensive backs. There are a lot of dudes who can move on this defense, but they are also susceptible to mistakes. And so I think that that misdirection style and movement will trip them up, and that's where I see Washington State maybe being able to sneak something in there.
Well, you already know that I will be super excited if that happens. You can chat with me on Locked On Pac-12's Twitter at LO_Pac-12. I definitely will be locked in during this game, so you can come on over there and chat with me. You can also follow me at _Cindy Robinson. You can follow Bryan Brown at BrownBear SLC, and then his Locked On Utes show page at Locked On Utes. Other than that, you can also follow along on the Odyssey app or wherever you get your podcast. Same thing for the Locked On Utes podcast. Thank you for making this your first listen of the day. Go ahead and make one of the other conference shows your second listen of the day. That's a Locked On SEC, Locked On ACC, and Locked On Big 12. All conference shows that will give you everything you need to know about what's going on with those conferences. All on YouTube now, so you can check out their YouTube channels as well as the Locked On Pac-12 Podcast YouTube channel. And then other than that, make sure you continue to stay Locked On Pac-12 on the Locked On Network.